Tech with Chris and Chris. Brought to you
Chris and
by
Chris.
CMCIT. So, what we're going to talk about today is securing devices at home and at work. A fun topic. Boring, but necessary.
Boring but necessary, exactly. Nobody wants to do this sort of work.
So,
But
I'm going to transition it so you can see us and what we're going to be talking about too at the same time. So, boom. And so that you can. All right. So, securing devices at home, right? So, with COVID and all this fun stuff that's been happening, there's been a huge change in how we work, right?
oh yeah.
A lot of people work from home, a lot of people don't work from home,
Uh-huh.
but in your service industries and where people can, they tend to want to work from home now.
Oh yeah.
We are a completely virtual company, so we work from wherever we want, which is kind of nice,
Mhm.
right? You can
Can
work,
be.
yeah, until the kids come bugging you.
Exactly.
So, with that in mind, we want to talk about how do you secure your home computer or your home office and your work computer and make it so that it's as low risk as you can possibly do with a couple of, simple steps that will help to lower risk and, the ability for people to actually do something malicious to your computer, right? So, cyber criminals, they're more active than they've ever been. Ransomware, you know, getting at your identity and stealing it, so on and so forth and such with, right?
Yeah.
So there's a couple of things we can do. You can try to separate your work devices, right? So you can have two devices, which, us nerds in IT have, probably six, but most people don't have that, right?
Right.
So the best way that I've seen to do this is to have different logins on your computer. One for your
Yep.
work entity and one for your home stuff. That way you're
Yep.
keeping that information at least logically separate, even though it's still on the same computer. It's a little less easy to get at the other stuff.
Right. Yep. Keeping that separate, keeping those logins separate, especially if you've got, say, a BYOD device. You want to keep those logins separate. You can make your own personal one and then make your company one that you'll then connect to all those different systems. It's not a huge separation, but it can be enough sometimes that the permissions that you have on one account don't affect the other.
Most definitely. Most definitely. So when you do that, you want to make sure that you're setting up, if you can, if you're using your home computer and you want to using it for work, you can do that by going into your computer and adding an account.
Mhm.
We're not going to dive into how to do that right here, but we can help you with that if you want, or ask your IT person, and they'll be more than happy to help you, I'm sure, because you're thinking security.
Mm-hmm. IT people love security
All
to
right.
the frustration of most users.
Yes, and the impedance of you actually getting work done sometimes.
Right.
So there's always that balance. So always try to keep that balance in mind when you're doing these things.
Mm-hmm.
So another thing that is really open to be able to get at is Wi-Fi, right?
Oh
So
yeah.
unsecured public Wi-Fi is one of the scariest things for for a security person because anybody's on there. So when you go to a cafe or wherever, anybody and
Mm-hmm.
everybody's on there, and everybody's computer that's connected to that can be found.
Yeah.
There are things that
And
you can do to say no, don't find me, but that doesn't mean they're not going to.
right. Man in the middle attacks are a big deal. Wi-Fi, and that's exactly it. What you don't want to stay, you don't want to put anything sensitive over a Wi-Fi network that you're not accustomed to or doesn't have a certain level of security. Don't log into your bank accounts. Don't log into your emails. Don't, because what hackers can do is they can actually set their computers up as an intermediary between you and the Wi-Fi that you believe you are connecting to. It's called a man-in-the-middle attack, and they can take all of the stuff that you're transmitting and do whatever they please.
And they'll even have the encryption if you're using encryption, because they can capture that and then go, oh, there's the key that they set up right in the beginning, and they can unencrypt all that stuff.
Yeah.
So, best case scenario, don't use Wi-Fi that you don't trust implicitly, that isn't secured, password protected, so on and so forth.
Right.
Even hotels, sometimes you want to be very careful. If you can't do this, there's a solution to help you, right? So the solution is usually like, you've heard of these things before, VPN. What is a VPN? It's a virtual private network. Or the other way you can describe it is a software, what is it? SD-WAN. Come on, I'm losing my brain on the acronym.
SD-WAN.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a software network connection that encrypts your data.
So basically,
between.
So basically, it keeps everything connected, but it encrypts that data so that you can't, necessarily casually get at it. It helps a lot, and it helps obfuscate where the data is coming from too, because it doesn't actually go out theirs. It goes to wherever your VPN, like your work, and then it goes out to the internet, or you can access the data on your network and things like that. So if you're doing things at home and you want to browse the internet and you really want to be secure, a lot of times doing a VPN like that helps, because then it doesn't lead back to your computer. It leads back to where the VPN is letting you out into the world.
Right. So to everybody else, it looks like you're at work.
Yep. And then you
as far as logically.
Yeah. And you should always use that even when you're at home. So you should use the work supplied VPN even when you're sitting in your home office.
Exactly.
Another way to do this and make sure that you're secure is passwords. Everybody's favorite thing, passwords. Strong, like man-style passwords. Unique, long, as long as you can make them. Sometimes people use phrases, but you also have to put in special characters, like the @ symbol and the asterisks and the exclamation points and so on, and numbers and uppercase letters and lowercase letters.
Makes it a lot harder to crack longer passwords. I think it's either 26 or 28 characters is where it's actually your passwords are encrypted in a different way. I think I have to look into that a little bit, but the longer, the more complex.
The longer it is, the harder it is to crack, because of all the variations for each character, and then each character, and then that's exponentially bigger and bigger and bigger. It's a geometric thing, right?
Oh yeah.
Like you have 9 here, and then you have 9 here plus those 9. So 9 variations, and then each variation has another 9, and so on and so forth. And the more you have, it keeps going. And I'm just talking numbers right there. So when you add in 26 digit, 26 alphabetic characters, and then you add in another 26 uppercase alphabetic characters, and then you add in all the special characters, which is like another 10 to 15 of them, depending on what they let you use. It gets exponentially harder, and that's why you want to do those kinds of things, because then it takes that much longer for them to try to guess it.
So sorry, go ahead.
The only thing I was going to say, and then the longer it gets, the more computing power it takes, so that the average computer would take months, sometimes years, to do one password if it's a really, really long one.
What about remembering all those difficult, long, crazy passwords?
Paper? No, I'm kidding.
A Post-it note under your keyboard, right?
Yes, things not to do with your passwords. Put them in your wallet. Write them down on pieces of paper or in a notebook.
On the back of your hand. Stick them on the side of your monitor.
Excuse me. Yep. Writing them down is not a good thing. if you're going to write them down, put it in a safe, you know,
Hmm.
and leave it there. Take it out when
Yeah.
you need it, put it back. If you're not going to write them down and you still need to remember them, because we do this, we have hundreds of passwords we have to remember, and we can't remember all of them, right?
Hmm.
So what we use are things called password managers, and you've seen those things. There's ones that are built into your browser. No, that's another thing you don't want to do. The ones built into your browsers can be really relatively easily, captured and skimmed through, and then they have all of your passwords. The ones that
Hmm.
you want to use are like third-party software, like LastPass. What other ones are there? Duo. There's a whole bunch of other ones, but LastPass is our favorite. We use that quite a bit.
Oh yeah.
And what it does is it allows you to save your passwords, and then it allows you to have them filled in for you, so you don't even have to think. You just right-click, fill this password in,
Yep.
and boom, you got it. And
Yeah.
you can also then, if you have a family, you can share your passwords among your family if you want, without it
Hmm.
going outside or anywhere else. It'll be shared, so everybody has access to that account, like your
Hmm.
Netflix account, for instance, or whatever. Right? You can put your Netflix password in there, and you can share it with the people in your immediate household so that they can log in on their devices.
Yep.
That
That's
kind
one
of
of the nice things that I like about LastPass is that you well, with the extension installed on your browser too,
yeah,
you just click on it and there it is. They also check, um, LastPass also checks on your passwords.
yep,
And gives you warnings on password complexity and
mm-hmm,
password. It checks to see if you've been compromised on certain password hacker
yep,
lists on the dark webs.
yep, and it also checks
So,
to see if you've used that password anywhere,
mhm.
because you should never use the same password more than once. If you ever, so one rule of thumb that I always do is if you're going to use the same password, use a different login name every dang time. So I that way you're not keeping that same it password for the same email address or something like that, or login. But
Right.
nowadays they're using email addresses more often than not, so that kind of negates some of that.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's one of the nice things too with the LastPass is that it can generate the passwords for you, so you don't have to worry about coming up with something that's complex enough. It'll automatically fill that in for you. Then you utilize that and it saves it for you.
Yep.
So, there's always, and multi-factor is always
Yes.
good if you can do it. Most people
Multi-factor.
don't care for it, but
And if you don't know what multi-factor is, if you've been living hopefully not in a cave or under a rock,
mhm,
multi-factor is when you log in and you type your password, it goes enter your token or authorization token, and sometimes it's on your phone,
mhm,
sometimes it's in your email that you get from them with a code, sometimes they text you a code. Those codes are the multi-factor authentication. You should always, 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 wherever possible, have that enabled,
yep,
because it is extremely hard for somebody to get your username and password and then also get the exact algorithm that they're using for your account that only
mhm,
gets sent to you or seen by you on your local or on your phone. Those things are not transmitted unless they're sent through an email or a text. When they're on your phone, like you're using the Google Authenticator or Duo or LastPass One or Microsoft or wherever, they have it's a actual mathematic algorithm that runs that shows you
mhm,
that it doesn't get transmitted back and forth, but both ends have the same one. So for your account, and then you see that, and you see
yep,
the same thing, and then it goes, oh, yep, that's the right one,
yep.
and that lets you
And
in.
a lot of different applications will give you the option to remember certain browsers and things like that, so you don't have to put it in every time. You can do 30 days or something like that. But again,
Still bad.
things can be compromised. That's not the best option, but most end users don't like to have to check their phone, put in the code, so on and so forth, even though it's really the best thing to do. I mean, it's it's better to make it more difficult for everyone to log in, because you're not making it just more difficult for yourself, you're making it much more difficult for people that want to compromise your information and data.
Yep. And the that is the biggest point of entry for people to get into information is your username and your password, because your work, your home, your everything, your bank, your everything uses that username and password to give you access to what you need to have access to.
Mm-hmm.
And if they have access to that, and it's your bank, for instance, they can clean your account out. You know,
Pretty quickly.
very
And
quickly, matter of seconds.
yeah,
It's scary
exactly.
at times.
It is. Some of the stuff that they do and they pull on people is just it's amazing. And the people that they target, unfortunately, are people that also aren't the most tech savvy. So, um, you know, if you've got people in your family that struggle, help them.
Yep. Yep.
Help grandma with her multi-factor
Yep.
because it's important.
Yes, very much so. Um, Another thing that you can do, because I'm sure we beat that horse to death,
Mhm.
is make sure you do all your updates. Updates are important. I know it
Mhm.
sounds horrible because every time you do an update, something breaks. While
Mhm.
that is partially true, yes, it also eliminates threats that are being found where people can get into your computers doing other means like backdoor access that's there, or they find
Yep.
a thing that's an exploit, that allows them to compromise a system and then gain access to the usernames, the passwords, the data, so on and so forth. That's what ransomware does a lot.
Mhm.
It compromises a system. A lot of times it's by sending an email, right? And then it looks for an exploit that it knows exists in Windows or something like that, and it uses that to propagate itself to wherever it wants to, and then encrypts everything, blah blah blah, and then you're SOL.
Exactly.
So
And again, it's one of those things where you go into work, you turn your system on, updates. I'll do them later. Oh, just you know,
yeah,
do them
exactly.
now.
Don't
Grab a cup of coffee or something.
don't
You know.
delay or let somebody do it for you that's reputable, reputable,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
reputable. I'll get the word right one of these days. So
Reputable.
reputable.
You got there. You got there.
Yeah, I got there somehow. Whether it's an IT company like us or your internal IT or another IT company, just make sure you have somebody that can help you with that, and hell, we'll answer your questions for you. Just call us. We don't charge for you to ask a question. Another thing that you want to make sure is always have virus protection. Virus protection is one of those things that will help detect things that are
Mhm.
weird, and it can help stop things sometimes. So virus protection is not just Windows Defender on your computer. It's usually a third-party software as well,
Yep.
like Avast or Trend Micro. I don't like McAfee personally, but it is one.
It is.
That's my personal preference. It's not necessarily
Mhm.
good or bad. It's just I don't like it.
Right.
There's a lot of other ones out there. There's free ones.
Mhm.
There's not free ones. If you need help with it, ask an IT person. They'll guide you along the lines of finding one that works for you. And
Absolutely.
and nowadays they have ones that actually help protect you from the web. They scan the websites as you're going to them. They also anonymize you, so
Mhm.
you're not as open to people seeing where you are, what you're doing, or so on and so forth. And it keeps track of everything so that you can find out what's going on, and it tells you, hey, something's wrong here, and then you can scan that stuff and kind of clean it out, and so on and so forth. So
Yep.
antivirus is important, and it should be part of your repertoire. Sorry, big words. No,
Repertoire.
you gotta put it in your toolkit.
You got to put it in your repertoire,
Yep.
cowboy.
Back in my day, we didn't have a repertoire
We just had a bucket. Um,
and a
what
hammer
what else? What's that?
and a hammer. You just hit
And a
it.
ham. Just
All right. So,
anybody tries to steal something, you just hit them with the hammer and put the bucket on their head.
yep.
Uh,
So another important thing is when you walk away from your computer, right? How
Oh
many
yeah.
of us leave it so that you can just walk right back and start doing what you were doing exactly where you left off and the screen
Hmm.
still stays the same?
Yeah, because
Hopefully
logging
nobody.
back in's a pain.
Hopefully nobody does that. But
Yeah.
we all know lots of people do it.
Hmm.
Even IT people. I don't know who I'm talking about. Me. I've done it before too. But
Hmm.
you
Oh, I've
want
definitely
to
done it.
make sure that you lock that computer. So one thing I
Hmm.
used to do when I was in IT at a corporation, if I found somebody's computer unlocked, I'd go into their email and send an email to IT saying, "Hey, I left my computer unlocked." And
When
usually that would solve the problem because then everybody'd go back, go, "Oh, really?"
when we first had instant messaging, one of the things that started happening at our company is that if anybody left their computer unlocked, um, we started to profess our love for one another over instant
Uh huh.
message.
Yes, IT
So,
people can be cruel.
and or we would just do a quick walk past and do control shift down.
Hmm. Another thing we used to do was we'd take a print screen of their desktop and then hide every icon so
That's a fun one
they
too.
would click on stuff and it wouldn't work.
Hmm.
Just simple things like that.
Hmm.
It's kind of like getting the wall of shame without actually being in the wall of shame.
Right.
So, but when what we're talking about is you should always lock your computer. Lock, the control alt delete
Yep.
thing, or
Yep. The
Windows. What is it? What's the Windows one?
Windows key L.
Yep, Windows key and L. So that little
Hmm.
Windows key and the L at the same time.
Yep. So if you just
I'm.
make a habit of that, you got to get up, get a cup of tea,
Yep.
Windows L.
Yeah,
I'm
back
out.
in my day, we didn't have a Windows key. You had to use the
Yeah.
Control, the Alt, and the Delete.
Yep. You had to sign out of your green screen terminal.
Yep. We didn't have green screen. All we could afford was blue. So making sure you lock that computer. And one thing you can do is you can actually go into the settings on your computer and tell it to time out after a certain number of minutes. So if you're just going to walk real quick away from your computer and come right back because you're grabbing a file or something, yeah, that's fine. You don't have to
Mhm.
lock your computer. But if you're going to walk away and you forget to lock it, you want it to do it for you. So
Mhm.
usually, like, my rule of thumb is 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Um,
And
it
that's
depends.
yeah, and that's definitely something that you can set
Hmm.
company wide using group policy and things like that, so you don't have to think about it too much. However, if you have to end up going that route, it can get frustrating for people that, if you set it for 3 minutes and you're maybe, I don't know, collating files over here, and then you turn back, your computer's locked. So, and a lot of the time, if you go, say you're going to get a cup of tea, you're going to end up talking to somebody. You think it's going to be a short trip, but it's not. It's going to
Cuppa
be
and a
15 minutes
spoon.
or 20 minutes. Yeah. So, it's good to just, lock it anyway. I'm going to the copier, lock it.
Most definitely.
Hmm.
So those are the big things that we think. Those are like roughly 7 areas you want to really look at to make sure that you're keeping your stuff secure as best as you can
Hmm.
from an end user, from your home user standpoint.
Hmm.
Your IT department usually has a lot more security features that are involved. Like when we install things, we have things in the background monitoring files, access, this, that, so on and so forth, so we can see if something weird is happening. We
Hmm.
install, the higher end antivirus software that can do all the browsing stuff and keep you safe and put you in a sandbox and lock you
Yep.
down if something bad happens. um, you know and then we do remote management stuff so that we can make sure that your stuff gets up to date, and if you need help we can help you out type things. That's what an IT department or an IT company will help you do.
Hmm.
So even home users may want to look into something like that for themselves if they're
Oh
unsure
yeah.
of how to do it.
Oh yeah. Well,
So
and that's, ultimately that's why we're here. We can do the IT stuff for you,
mhm.
so you can do your business.
Yep.
Um, what about
Good sticking the tagline
USB?
in. All right.
What about USB devices? I know I was at a long time ago, I was at a like seminar for security, was a real riot. And the keynote speaker was actually a penetration tester. He was previously a black hat hacker, which means he was a bad guy. Um, there's white hat hackers and black hat hackers. White hat hackers are the guys that test systems, and the black hat hackers are the guys that like to compromise systems. And
No,
one of the
they
things that
test the
he
systems.
Mhm. One of the things that he liked to do is he would go out and buy 20 USB drives, thumb drives. And if he wanted to compromise a specific company, he would drop them in the parking lot. And eventually, somebody would pick up that USB drive and plug it into their computer. And after that, he would have it configured to automatically run a program. The person that plugged it into their computer would never know. They don't see it happen. And then he would have complete and total ownership of the network.
Yep.
He was able to do whatever he wanted.
I worked at a company where somebody did that.
Mhm.
And they took this little thing right here and plugged it into their computer, and boom, all of a sudden all the drives started deleting themselves.
It's kind of crazy how that
That's
happens,
kinda
right?
crazy,
And that's almost a best case scenario when that thing happens.
Yeah, it really wasn't that bad because we had backups, but
Right.
it was like, and then they did it
Well,
again after we told them don't plug any USBs in. They did it one more time, so they reinfected it again. Luckily, we had the things to stop it in place, but they did it again.
yeah.
So then, when something bad happens like that, IT tends to get the big, huge hammer out and say, no, you can't have a USB device on your computer anymore. And they lock
Right.
you out of it.
The ban hammer. Don't want the ban hammer.
No, it sucks. But sometimes because people don't learn, or there's, fear, right? And it's a legitimate fear because it's happened. They'll do that. So just always never trust it. If you see something sitting in a coffee shop, like he just said, they drop it on the ground, they'll leave it in a coffee shop too. They'll leave
Oh,
them
yeah.
in coffee shops, they'll leave them everywhere. You find one? No, don't plug it into your computer. Just pick it up and toss it.
Yep. Just toss it. Even if it's something, you even if you see someone, that maybe it looks like a really high end one. It's got 512 gigabytes of memory on it.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. Toss it. It's not worth it.
Yep. It's not worth it. Ooh, I got a 5. No, you got to
yeah.
compromise.
Because restoring from backups
It's not fun.
takes time. Takes a lot of time. So that's downtime that you have to deal with.
Yep.
And then if it spreads, then all of those other systems need to be restored. And the technology's come a long way with restoring system images a lot quicker, but there's still downtime. And there are still companies out there that back up all of their stuff to tape, which is not a bad backup medium, but it can take weeks to restore from tape.
Yes, I remember I used to have a Commodore with the cassette tape player one. You play a game and you get to the one part and you'd have to wait like 5 minutes for the next part to load.
Yeah.
So, and it was just a text-based game with just a graphic for the background. And it would take probably an hour just to do 7 to 10 things.
Right.
But it was still
that's
cool.
It was. I mean, my Commodore was the best. I had a Commodore 64 C.
Ooh,
So it wasn't the brown one.
You had the gray one with the
But I only had the 5 1/4 inch floppy. But I remember at the time it was actually pretty funny because my dad said, we're going to get a computer, and I don't know whether or not to get the mouse or the light pen. Because at the time you could use a light pen.
I remember that, yeah.
On the pixels of the television screen, because we didn't have a monitor, we just had an old TV set.
Yep, everybody, yeah.
Yeah, I did have a friend that had a monitor, but he also had a Commodore 128.
I had 3 64s, a 128. I even had the hard drive for the Commodore.
Really?
I had a 20 meg hard drive for the Commodore that was called the Lieutenant Colonel, and you could actually hook up multiple computers into it.
Really?
Yeah. So one thing I did was actually I had a multi-line bulletin board system running off of Commodore 64s. So I had three phone lines
Really?
coming into it. Yeah, it was pretty impressive. And you
What
could
was your what was your bulletin board?
back then it was, let's see, there was, first I'd called it Red Dragon Inn, and then I called it SDI for Strategic Defense Initiative. You know, go back to the days of,
Do you want
Ronald
to play a
Reagan.
game?
Yeah, that kind of thing. Yep. Yeah. So it was that kind of thing, and had the modems and all that fun stuff.
Just scamming the carrier all day long?
Yep. I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, okay.
Never did anything bad.
Um,
Wait,
were
is it
you
longer than 7 years ago? Yes. Okay,
yeah.
so
Yeah, it's yeah, statute of limitations ran out. It's fine. Um, did you were you on ODS?
no.
Oh, okay. It was a bulletin board that I frequented. It was a pretty big Milwaukee one back in the 90s, I think.
Yeah, see, I got out
Early
of
90s.
the Commodore part in, I'd say that right around 90. That's when I got my first IBM, and then I
Yep.
started doing it on the IBM.
Yeah.
Actually, no,
That's I
take that back. The Amigas, and then the IBMs. So I ran an
yeah, the
Amiga one.
Amigas.
I had an Amiga
Those Amigas
500
were
and a
nice.
1000,
Really?
and then I had the 200 gig hard drive on the, or no, 200 megabyte hard drive on that thing. Yeah,
Wow,
it
you
was
were flying on
a
that.
SCSI, you know, one of those cool ones.
Yeah.
But I remember
That's
that
the
the hard drive for the Commodore was the size of a VCR. So okay, enough nostalgia.
yeah. Um but
So
yeah,
security
no
was fun.
USB drives that you don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Which will lead you down the rabbit hole of old stuff that we were talking about.
Right.
So no more old stuff.
No more old stuff.
But I am old. So any questions you have, please feel free to let us know. You can submit them on our site, cmcitindustries.com/askyourtech, which actually I could show you right now.
Yeah.
You click on there, you click there. You can't see it, Chris, because I'm not sharing it to you.
It's
And
okay.
then you can go right over here, ask your tech question. Boom. And we'll either answer it or answer it online. Another thing you can do is you can join us live in this little Zoom thing if you want to by going to this site. Or you can watch us here too. See, right
Yeah.
there. You can press play and watch. So with that,
Check us
I think we're done, right?
just about. Check us out on LinkedIn
Oh,
and
yeah.
our blog
Yep.
and our Facebooks.
Yeah, thank you for
The Book
reminding me
Face.
that. The Book of Faces.
The Book of Faces.
Just search for CMC IT Industries,
Yep.
and you hopefully will find us.
All right. Have a good one.
All right. Hasta la pasta, people.